2 and 1.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Scalise and you're listening to my very brand new radio show, Jerusalem Stories. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here today. If I'd finished my quest to teach my father how to say it's a blessing and from God in all the major languages of every monotheistic religion, I'd say them all now. But right now I'll just say the universe is smiling on me. Anyway, that's enough rambling. For the sake of everyone listening, I'll just introduce myself, talk a little bit about what this show's all about, and then I'll start my self-indulgent rambling for my first time. Like I said, my name's Ashleigh. I'm just about to get my Bachelor of Arts in International Relations, Political Science, and Philosophy. Shout out to the Salami Growers Association. This is kind of for you. I've travelled all the way here from Western Australia and landed this sweet radio gig. Before this, I was suffering what I believe we could all refer to as a quarter-life crisis, the least legit of all the crises. And I was just kind of begging for something to save me. Cue Jerusalem. What I love about this place is how much there is to learn. I've not met one person with a view of the world similar to my own. And let me tell you, that is the stuff my dreams are made of. The existence of cultures that are just so at odds with each other, side by side in these neighborhoods, is just so intriguing. And coming from the centre of what is, essentially just a middle-class bogan Australia, meeting people that are so strong in their faith and in their identities, it's refreshing, it's awe-inspiring, and it's also maybe a little intimidating. Ultimately, I think what I've learnt from my so far short time in Jerusalem is it's not what you see in the news. That's not it. There's just so much more to Israelis, to Palestinians, than all the spiteful news stories we seem to boil them down to in what I assume is most of Western culture. So far, I've realized the most important lesson to take away from here is that fundamentally, we're all similar on the inside. Everyone's born kind, our natural state is in peace, and that kind of handily brings us to the whole point of this show, and the ones to come, hopefully. I guess the title speaks for itself. Stories of Jerusalem. I'm trying to present narratives from Jerusalem. Each week I kind of want to interview another person from the city. I just want to share their story. It's not necessarily going to be political. It's not necessarily going to be a story of great triumph and adventure and good and evil, but I hope it'll be enlightening, and I'm sure every guest will have some things we can all relate to and some things we can all learn from. A little story, I guess, might explain my inspiration best. It is Jerusalem Stories, after all. In my first week here, I went to a mall with Sharon, who has a show on this station too. I had to buy a laptop, long story. Not this won't be anyway. Just one of the coolest people I've ever met. The security to get into this mall was crazy. Not only were our bags checked on the entrance and our bodies were scanned for explosive, which I have never witnessed outside of an airport, but on the way in, a woman looks into the car, she just kind of checks us out, and then tells us we're fine to drive in. I looked at Sharon because I was so confused. And then she explains to me, oh, that's just what happens here. I still did not get what looking at us was going to prove. So I kind of just look at her questioningly. And she says, they're just kind of checking to see we're not Arabs, just super casually. I was pretty taken aback for all the obvious reasons, as you can tell. But at the same time, it kind of opened my eyes to aspects of life in a state of conflict. Such kind of inbuilt profiling is so entrenched in life here, it's almost impossible to escape. While I certainly understand both sides of the argument, I guess it's really shocking to consider what life would be like on that other side. More close to home, what I thought was, imagine living here with my dad, who looks like an Arab, dark olive skin, super hairy, you know the deal, if you've seen my dad. Not many of you would have, that's weird. There's no doubt that life here would be much harder for him anyway. It's a struggle I'd never have to experience, but I had seen him go through this profiling at the airport and things like that. I guess I felt guilty, maybe unreasonable, when I realized that that's the only line of thinking that really brought it home for me. It took relating the problems to my father, essentially my best friend, his life, to make me realize how unjust this profiling was. It was wrong, but it was a huge inspiration. I thought, hey, this actual knowledge of an actual person possibly going through these things is kind of what makes me feel more empathetic towards this situation here, rightly or wrongly. I thought maybe if everyone knew everyone just a tiny little bit more, we'd all be a little more empathetic. There'd be a little less hate in the world, and we'd think about what we were doing before we, just threw all of our prejudices in the mix. Anyway, here we are, the end of the beginning of the end, whatever. I hope all these stories that come in the next couple of months while I continue this show will help everyone, all of us listening, to learn and grow, and myself as well. I look forward to learning so much. All that good stuff. On that note, if anyone wants to be interviewed or has any questions they want a handful of Jerusalemites to answer, is that a word? Not sure. You should all drop me a line. I'm keen for a collab. Before we get into it, let's take a break. And for those not listening on YouTube, you will hear what I think is an awesome song with a, badass Palestinian female rapper, because I'm all about badass female rappers.
Always listening to Radio 4B.
You are listening to the only radio station with no borders, Radio All for Peace.
Radio All for Peace.
Alright, welcome back. Love that song. Probably more than I should, considering I don't understand any of these lyrics, but whatever. So, this being the first show, I thought it'd be best to just leave the interviews for a more practiced interviewer, i.e. future me. So I'll introduce my own stories, or just ease us into this a little and get to know each other before we dive right in. For that reason, this show will be shorter than the rest are going to be, hopefully. I don't think you'd want to hear just my voice for a whole hour. You're welcome. So, start off, where am I from? Where do I live now? What am I doing? I've already kind of answered this. As we know, I'm from Perth, Western Australia. The state's pretty idyllic as far as crime rates and landscapes go. And as far as I can tell, it's a pretty white country. Personally, I think the quiet in that city can get a little tedious. Don't know if I can really connect with the place. So, maybe better in Jerusalem, who knows? Here I'm living in a place called Nachlaot. Don't know if I pronounced that right. Sorry to any listeners that can pronounce that right. It's a trendy, youthful neighborhood. It's in West Jerusalem. I've met mostly American Jews there. Thankfully, I've made a pile of friends who've helped me settle in here, who are really lovely. I feel almost disappointed that I'm in a place with such little diversity when I felt like there was a lot here. I've really only met Jewish people. Maybe that's because I look Jewish and people of the same ilk stick together. I'm not even joking about that. Like yesterday, this woman asks me to translate some Hebrew for her in the shop. It's like a supermarket. I had to apologize. I was like, sorry, I can't read Hebrew. And she gets angry at me. She's like, but you look Israeli. I know, I'm sorry. You look like a Jew. Yeah, no, sorry, false advertising. Anyway, that was a tangent. I'm about to move to Masrara in a couple of days, and I've started learning Arabic. So hopefully my next update will be a little less one-sided. I hear it's a little more mixed there. For now, I'm so happy experiencing this cultural side of the city. I'm less familiar with it. I'm definitely pretty far from someone who identifies with like a right-wing dominant culture. So the experience is super enlightening. It's actually changing my attitude and opinion in a different way to what I thought it would when I first turned up. It's actually so lovely, especially with my endless thirst to know everything I possibly can. The friends I've made here have so kindly let me in on their Shabbos dinners and lunches and brought me along to these classes taught by a local rabbi to learn more and more about a faith that I haven't really had much to do with since the age of 6. What I've learned is that the people, most likely as a result of their religion, are always largely really supportive and positive. They thank God for every failure because it brings a lesson, and every low moment they do the same thing because it's like building up to a high or something. They hold such value and love that I've never seen before in such quantities. It's really inspirational. It feels really warm. And I can't wait to learn more. Maybe confusingly, to those who've read the news outside of Israel, what I've seen in people here, in a state where every young person is forced to serve in like a very real military. I've seen a pursuit of peace. I've not met one person here who said they were anti-peace. And a majority of those that I've spoken to have preached a peaceful resolution to the conflict raging between the Israelis and Palestinians, most even saying that compromise was necessary and welcomed for the benefit of reaching a resolution that's peaceful. They have peace within themselves, and they really seem to want to extend it outwards. And that's been one of the most interesting things to me. Perhaps it's because everyone here has had to experience life in an actual war. They can truly appreciate the opposite. I like to think it's just human nature to wish for peace. In Jerusalem itself, even, I've seemed to experience a kind of peace that doesn't come elsewhere. I don't know whether it's the convergence of these really significant religious centers that bring some kind of godly atmosphere. But for a city at the center of a violent conflict, it kind of brings me a strange amount of peace, and I feel kind of content just existing here. In some ways. I think before we get more serious, I'll give us a little more musical interlude, this time from an Israeli artist. Sorry for those on YouTube, it'll be cut out. But we'll get back and get real deep after this.
Radio All for Peace.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to everyone who just tuned in. If anyone's listening at all, oh gosh, insecurities plague me. Anyway, if anyone is listening, I was just talking about my positive experiences of Jerusalem so far in the community I'm in. I'm kind of hoping to set myself up in a different neighborhood every month, because I feel like it's the only way to really get to know what's up. This month I've been in West Jerusalem, chilling with the lovely Jewish community of Nachlaot. Sorry again for that pronunciation. They've welcomed me with open arms. They've taught me that right wing is not, as I once thought, a synonym for dickhead. True story, I'm not lying. It took until I was much older than I'd like to admit before I learnt that right wing was actually a reference to a political leaning and not just another generic insult. Thanks a lot, Mum. In saying that, though, I've still met prejudice in the community here. People are generally super accepting of my status as a heathen, non-Jew, whatever you want to call me. I think it might be my appearance helps me along, as I was saying. Coming from a country that was kind of built on institutionalized racism, and now it's become what we like to call casual racism. It does it really well. It's sometimes confronting, though, to see and hear things here where it's the other way around. I've been seen profiling before. I mean, if you've seen my dad, you know he's never made it through an airport security screening without explosive testing. But I've never really experienced it myself. Maybe that kind of insider perspective has been helping me for investigation's sake or whatever, though. In any case, I've noticed that the prejudice here people feel justified in their prejudice here. So many friends, when I've complained about some small case of street harassment or someone mentions a crime, they're quick to jump to conclusions. They're like, oh, was he an Arab? Bet it was an Arab. They do things like that. And then they see my face, questioning, and they try to backtrack. Ugh. Anyway, they're like, oh no, I'm not being racist. It's just what they like. One friend even tried to assure me that he did have Arab friends. But then he still told me to be careful hanging out with one. It's weird. It kind of scares me that people are so open with that kind of thing. I get that a marginalized group has some just cause to fight back, and I get that crime rates seem to be higher in groups that are marginalized. And I get that to be an Arab in Israel is more than marginalization. It's something like persecution. But everyone here seems so friendly, no matter what background they have. It kind of feels like these problems are created through this way of thinking. Chicken versus egg or whatever, I guess. Unsurprisingly, the more I question Israelis about these kinds of opinions that they hold, the stronger they get in these opinions. In efforts to justify themselves, I just kind of hear the same statements from so many people. They've all learned the similar type of hate for a group of people that they've never met, and they've all learned it in the same place. I remember that one night, I was just chilling, and I was asking a friend I'd just met about his opinion on the war, the conflict happening here. Since everyone seems to have served in the army here, I kind of feel wary talking about it, but I'm so interested, so I just took a chance to ask. So this night, I pluck up the courage to ask straight out what he thought the deal was. And I was met with the same usual peace positive response. He just kind of drifted over it. So I pushed. I wanted to push. I asked him what he felt about being in the army. Whether it was frightening, whether it was horrible, whether he felt unfortunate. It's just so alien to me. He said it was largely a good experience. He didn't really feel that it was negative. He's like, oh, these Arabs, bad people. They're not like us. It's just what has to be done. And then he's like, oh, no, they're not all bad. It's just this particular group. And I was like, look, mate, I had to push further. I had to ask more. It got worse. It got really confronting. And I'm not going to go too far because it feels weird to say. I just don't want to say the words, but he got to a point and then he paused and he's kind of thinking over the things he said. And he kind of looks down and he looks back at me and he goes, these aren't actually my real opinions. He's like, I don't know what made me say all of these things, but it's not what I think. I guess you were just asking me these questions and I just happened to respond that way, but I'm actually not that guy. And so I stopped pushing because I didn't need to hear him get better or worse. I felt like I'd, caused enough conflict for one night, but I was stuck there pondering silently. I was like, was he trying to backtrack from his real opinion? Or did my questioning prompt him to answer with what he thought were typical responses so I would hear them? Was I just far enough removed from his circle of influence that he could let me in on his true feelings? Or was he pushing down his true feelings and trying to educate an outsider as to what the popular opinion might have been? I didn't ask any of the questions, but I had so many of them that night. I didn't want to push him since he had this kind of cognitive dissonance, but it really confused me. And I really hope to learn more about that kind of thing and kind of push people as far as possible when I'm getting their stories, as well as just hearing, what their life is, because that's also important. On that note, let's not push me any further, and let's head to sorry for those on YouTube, I'm going to throw in a little Christian song because, hey, equal representation.
Stay tuned. This is All for Peace. This is your station. Radio All for Peace.
Well, here we are, very close to the end. Thanks for listening, everyone. I think I'm a great interviewer. I haven't voiced many of those thoughts outside of this recording booth, so well done, Ashleigh. Some tough questions you threw me. Not really. Anyway, hope you'll still love me now that you've seen my insides, and I've just kind of spouted my thoughts at you. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm really keen to see where this goes. I'm keen to learn more and to report it all back to you. I promise we'll have someone way more interesting than myself next time, and we'll get even deeper into everything you want to know. We'll have better philosophical pondering, maybe less, probably. Hey, at least I got a free counseling session this time. Anyway, again, please, if you want to be interviewed in here, if you have any questions you want answered, just holler at me, and I will be so happy to hear from you. I'm just gonna cut this off there and leave you with a fun apolitical song to round this all out.